Joining me now, House Oversight Committee member, Georgia Congressman Jody Hice. Congressman, great to see you. This is the same Adam Schiff who promised repeatedly that there was compelling evidence of Trump-Russia collusion, conspiracy was hiding in plain sight, and he would reveal it in good time. And of course he didn't, because it didn't exist. It was all a lie by Adam Schiff. So do you have a reasonable basis to be skeptical now of anything and everything that Adam Schiff says?
Absolutely. The entire country has every reason to doubt what he says. As you mentioned, he's been lying to the American people for 2 years, 2.5 years, and he has a horrible track record. And when he says he's been reluctant towards impeachment, that again is another lie. This whole thing for 2.5 years has been all about impeachment, and they're going to continue down this path.
Right.
And the American people are sick of this.
You know, we played the clip of the president. He said there's no quid pro quo. The Wall Street Journal was the first to report the same thing, no quid pro quo. That doesn't seem to deter the media, and yet they seem to ignore with impunity the obvious quid pro quo demanded by Joe Biden, and he bragged about it on videotape. Take a listen to this.
So you're not getting the billion. I'm going to be leaving here, and I think it was, what, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a got fired.
Firing that prosecutor benefited his son, who worked for the company who was being investigated by that prosecutor. Do you think that needs to be seriously investigated by the Department of Justice? Absolutely.
You know, the Democrats have become masterful of accusing others of the very thing that they themselves are guilty of. We just had 2.5 years of them accusing the president of colluding with the Russians, when in reality we now know Hillary Clinton, the DNC, they were funding this thing, a false dossier, a false FISA warrant, and all this sort of, they were the guilty ones. Now we have the same thing all over again. Joe Biden, by his own admission, as vice president, threatening to withhold $1 billion of U.S. loan guarantees if he doesn't get his way, and their prosecutor, who's investigating his son, is not fired. There's the story. But what are the Democrats doing? They're accusing the president of some sort of misbehavior. It's time we get to the bottom of this. The American people are sick of this hypocrisy, and that's what they hate about this city, quite frankly.
Well, Democrats in the media are screaming at the top of their lungs and lighting their hair on fire that the whistleblower's complaint has not been revealed. But under the law, it cannot be and should not be, because as I wrote in a column last Friday on FoxNews.com, the whistleblower isn't a whistleblower at all. There is no whistleblower law that allows someone in an agency or department to blow the whistle on the President of the United States. In our constitutional government, he's the unitary executive. He's not a member of any department. And those whistleblower statutes only apply to complaints within the department. So isn't the DNI, who will testify on Thursday, correct in saying this isn't a whistleblower, it doesn't qualify, we're not turning it over?
I think that's an excellent point and spot on, because, I mean, you just look at this. The President of the United States, part of his job is to be talking with other leaders of other governments and other countries. And if we are going to create an environment where the President is not able to have those conversations in confidentiality, then we're creating a mess that the president's not even going to be able to do his job. So, yes, it appears to me that the whistleblower has no jurisdiction, if you want to use that term, when it comes to the President of the United States.
One other thing reported by the Washington Post, actually, and that is Joe Biden was encouraging and pressuring Ukraine to increase its gas production. And there is his son working for a Ukrainian gas company. While we're investigating the Bidens, should we add that on?
Absolutely, we need to take that on. We need an investigation on that. I mean, here's the vice president putting pressure on another country for the purpose of benefiting the vice president's son, who's making $50,000 a month in that capacity. And yet the vice president, Joe Biden at the time, threatening to withhold $1 billion of potential funding to the Ukraine, and by his own admission, as you played a little while ago, absolutely this needs to be investigated. There's the true story, and yet the Democrats continue trying to throw mud at the president. This relentless attack against the president has gone too far, and I believe the American people are seeing through it.
Wow. And then while we're at it, let's throw in China. The son flies over on Air Force Two to China with his father, and a few days later suddenly gets more than $1 billion for his fund from China sources. I mean, this thing really stinks. But, Congressman, we're out of time, and thank you for being with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.